Hello, everyone. Hello, BetaCast community, and so on. Nice to meet you all here. So let's start with the podcast. Remember, you can go into the chat, you can say hi, you can interact with us, you can make questions during the podcast. We are already here and we are going to start. So let me introduce our first guest. Filipe Portela is a business angel, a managing partner of Core Angels Impact. He's a founding partner of Impact Hub. In the past, he was head of business development on Portugal and Spain from Cedars, and he was the executive director from Fundação Mais. I'm going to introduce Domingos Cruz now, a lawyer, the managing partner at cca.law. He's a business angel, and from many things, he's a teacher at Porto Business School. He also won a prize of 40 under 40 in 2016 from the prestige Iberian Lawyer as one of the best lawyers under 40 years old. Also, the last guest, David Braga, Malta, is a life sciences investor, venture partner at Vazalos Biocapital, board member at Portugal Biotechnology Organization, and from many things, he's founder and CEO at Lim Therapeutics, and is a member of Portugal 21. So, welcome. Let's start. So, during these times, these strange times about the coronavirus and so on, the first question that I want to make you, how are you adapting to this crisis? Like watching everyone goes remote, everybody's staying in house. Companies are adapting. The ecosystem is changing. The way that the companies behave in the future is going to change. So, how are you adapting right now, Domingos? Okay, we can start with you.
Well, first of all, thanks, Jose, for the kind introduction. And hello, all out there listening to us. Well, the challenge to adapt to home office for us and the law firm has been rather easy because we have been working at least 2-3 days per week home officing for 2 years now. And what it did was speed up the implementation of an already a very good solution for everybody to work from home. And if you want to buy stock now, Zoom stock should be roofing because everyone is using Zoom. And therefore, it makes sense that we are all getting used to it, and it's something that it will remain. I think that people are start looking at physical space and physical meetings in a totally different way. Because I was speaking with an entrepreneur that had a call center, and suddenly he realized I don't have to have everyone in the same space. I can simply have call centers from home, and imagine what I can say from that. So this is the upside, and but I think everyone is adapting fairly well. But it still is a disruption in the sense that you have to take some measures to keep the team together and avoid that teams work in silos because they don't meet each other. So therefore, there are a lot of remote activity that you need to make with your teams, and I think that happens to everyone. Now the challenge is for me not exactly what you need to do to adapt right now, but think, as you were saying, Jose, what will change on our way of life in the future, because definitely what we are living now is a changing world, a rapid changing world, and this will have huge consequences depending on the outcome, but the consequences will happen on how we deal. Is health going to be a priority right now? Will we be investing much more in health? What are going to be our priorities from now on when we see that a virus can simply change our way of life or disrupt a world economy? So how can we prevent this from happening again? There are a number of questions, and very interesting that everybody's trying to answer is how this will impact the way we live. That for me right now is what I spend most of the time thinking.
David, you can go next.
Happy to. Thanks for the kind invitation and the intro. Hello, everyone. I think I'll be here on the opposite side of the spectrum. As managing a biotech company, unfortunately, remote work is completely not feasible, correct? Our people are in labs doing experiments. We have animal facilities where we need to keep all the animals' welfare in state. So simply either we shut down completely and we assume that these months are going to be lost months in our timeline. So we need to reset after the crisis and restart with significant implications for everyone, correct? So what do we do to the people? Are they still paid or not? Do they go to layoff? Which are measures that we don't want to take at all. Or we can figure out a new normal under the current situations. And I think across our industry, several companies have been taking different decisions. So for instance, in our case, the R&D unit where we have our labs decided to reduce the human density inside the facility and put controls at the doors so that people are distributed amongst two shifts. And once they are not doing experiments, they do remote work. So this enables us to be at, I don't know, 60% capacity compared to what we were before the crisis, and create still a safe environment for people to work so that some type of progression can happen. And if you think about the community of startups that are like this, they are completely dependent on cash. So biotech startups do not invoice €1 to anyone during their life cycle. And so if they needed to sustain the burn rate throughout months of non-progression, this would be a complete catastrophe. Exactly at the same time as Domingos was saying, that all of us likely are wanting to invest more in health, correct? And biotech is part of that. Biotech is part of the revolution that happened in the last 30 years in healthcare, with a lot of solutions being developed. And so really here we need to figure out a new normal. And then of course that meetings can happen through Zoom. We are happy clients of Zoom for, I think, 4 years now. 3 years now, and everything else can be done remotely. But the core part of our activity still needs physical presence in specialized facilities. And so it's very important that we can carry on and enable the people that need to go to work in a safe environment.
Filipe?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing here is basically staying at home. That's the first thing to tackle this issue. And then basically, in my case, well, with different entities, we are doing different approaches. So for instance, in the case of the Core Angels Impact, we are already a remote team. So there is no big changes there. And also we don't sell to customers, either final customers or B2B or whatever it is. So there is no issue there. But certainly, so we deal with investors, and we are feeling that investors are refraining, let's say. So they are not stopping, but we feel that they are waiting and see what's going to happen in the future. Well, but we have money in the bank, so we are not stopping operations, which is good. And for instance, but talking a bit about Impact Hub, well, in that front, since it's a physical space, it's stopped. So no physical space. It's closed. In less than a week, we changed everything to remote. The entire community, the entire team, everything is happening remote, and it was quite fast. And I must say, I'm quite surprised with that. And it's going to be a couple of months really tough. I would say between 3 to 6 months. They are going to be tough, and we'll have to find a way to increase revenues and to cut costs, basically, because that's the biggest doubt here. It's how long is this going to take to get back to normal, and I would say it's going to take between 3 to 6 at least, if not more, because then I'm sure we'll have a financial crisis, economical crisis after this. So we will still have to adapt of what's coming, and basically, as Domingos was saying, we'll have to adapt to a new world, in a sense, in the world of how we are going to live, how we are going to work, and how we will manage to fit our business and our life into this, into what is coming.
So let me ask you now, because I'm reading a lot of stuff, and there is an opinion out there. We're all talking about the future, about the crisis to come, and so on. But like between the 2008 crisis, the crisis that is going to come, there is a huge difference. Because the crisis of 2008, the banks didn't have the money, and the funds didn't have the money. But now the funds, they have the money, and the banks, they kind of have the money. Now it's going to behave differently. I want to know your opinion here. Do you think it's going to happen in a couple of months to come? And try to like do some kind of future prognostic about from the markets to the startups to the funds to the investment to the corporates. So how do you think that these layoffs going to impact our economy and so on? So Domingos, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I love doing futurology. It's one thing that lawyers do very well, especially because they're always wrong. But anyway, first things first. It one depends on how long this will take. Second, it depends on what our government is going to do. If it steps up its game, or if it remains doing what it's currently doing, which is close to nothing. And I mean to economic measures. I'm not going to discuss the sanitary issues, but on the economic side, it mainly depends on how the government behaves. Because right now, we choose, I think, well, to have the horizontal quarantine, which means that everyone's at home and not just the group risks, and that's an option. It's a safe option, but then we have to take care of the economy. And right now, the layoff for 1 month or 2 months is enough. But if this goes more than 2 months, what you're expecting is companies with zero revenue and having the costs on salaries, even if it's just 1/3, and that's unbearable for startups. That's unbearable for SMEs, and I would venture to say that's unbearable for big companies. Because it doesn't make sense that you continue to spend every month to 300,000 euros if you have a payroll of 1 million, or 100,000 euros if you have a payroll of 300,000 euros month by month, and not having a revenue. You're going to make an option. I prefer to go chapter 11, and I can open in 6 months time and do my business again, and I'll hire everyone again. So unless there's a real incentive for government, because I'll give you an example. I was doing a webinar today with startups, and they were complaining that they cannot access any credit line made available right now because they don't fulfill the ratios. So unless the government thinks from a sector perspective, startups need money, and the French government already addressed that, for example, when it made the bridge loans for them to go over this period of time. SMEs right now, banks are asking for personal guarantees and are asking for 2.5% interest rate on the credit. And that doesn't make sense, because are you going to leverage with debt when you don't know what's going to happen in 1 month time? That's crazy. That's ludicrous. So unless the government understands that what the companies need is liquidity, we're not getting anywhere. And then I fear that we are going to have a global recession, but us as a country will have a harder time to get up due to our economic weakness. So in a nutshell, unless the government understands that we need to put liquidity in the market so that invoices are paid and salaries are paid, or we are doomed for the abyss. And I'm not trying to be tragic, but it's really what I see. And with the companies that I discuss with, all of them say, well, it's okay, layoff is fine, but I can hold 2 months, but not more.
David?
Yeah, so I think I'm fairly convinced now that due to the characteristics of what we're doing, we're going to have kind of a cyclic curve going up and down over the year to come. I think we have two ways to get out of this, either by herd immunity, as everyone now knows what it is because of Boris Johnson, or because of the development of a vaccine. And both of those are going to take time, and preferably we are going to be able to do this without having a massive human loss in the process. And so for me, I believe that throughout the next 6 months, we are going to be opening and closing depending on the evolution of the numbers. I wish, and this is a wish list that I have, that we start testing properly. And I think we need to start testing properly not only to know the people that are infected and be able to contain the progression, but also to know the people that were infected and never knew about it, so that we can start to see if there is immunity or not. And this is a little bit technical, but sorry, it's my my area, because I think to push forward the economy, we must know what happened in the first peak, correct? If we do not learn with the first peak, then we'll go on being blind for the rest of the year, and then it's complete collapse. If we think about Portugal, for instance, in detail, roughly 14% of our GDP is tourism. Okay? And it's tourism massively in small and medium enterprises. That revenue typically is booked by May, June. That's when people are doing most of the bookings for traveling. This year, it's zero so far. Whatever it was has been canceled, and it's zero. 40% of the GDP going down for us is 3 or 4 times worse than the bailout package that we had in the most recent crisis in 2011. So we must do something to ensure that that this scenario does not happen, being that we'll not be able to control tourism. So I think government needs to beef up the game strongly. Today we heard that ECB is likely going to buy every single bond, which is to support the impacts of this pandemic crisis. And so for me, I think like Germany did, issuing $353 billion of debt to support the crisis, we should be doing the same thing. Instead of waiting for a bailout, we should be issuing 30, 40, whatever the market buys of our bonds with an extended maturity, so that we have a bazooka of cash to inject in the economy. We cannot be assuming that companies that cannot pay whatever, Social Security in March, in July are going to be able to pay. In July, they are not going to be able to pay still, correct? And so we cannot just defer payments, or we defer them forever, which I think is what we should do, or we simply say you don't need to pay because we have enough cash in our reserves to do it. And without having that cash, is complicated for the government to take a decision, because the government likely is also thinking about, can I bail out private companies and not pay pensions or salaries in the government in July? So for now, they're trying to make this balance, but they really need to increase the cash levels that they have so that they can properly do something. And then for startups, I think there are 2 things. We have money in the bank. Investors have money in the bank. I think over the last 2 years, we've seen a significant growth in VC funds and private equity funds in Europe, record levels. But now we need to select as well, correct? Do we do new investments, or do we make sure that our companies are well funded, because we are in those companies already? And a lot of people are going to slow down the pace of new investments to make sure that their own portfolio can survive throughout the crisis. And so I think for startups, there are cuts in this next 18 to 24 months. While there is uncertainty in the market, we need some type of measures. Either, for instance, in Portugal, there are government lines in pretty much every single venture capital fund. So the government could increase the volume of those funds so that they can do both things. They can, on one side, support their own portfolio, but carry on doing new investments, or create some kind of credit lines for startups and entrepreneurs. And then the last thing I would say for small businesses is, I think we completely forgot that pretty much all the measures that the government put forward do not include the managers of the company. So if you own a small company and you are a manager, you cannot put yourself in layoff. You cannot claim unemployment unless you bankrupt your company, even though you can technically never happen. So Social Security never paid unemployment to a manager of a company historically. So these people that sometimes have a micro or a small company with 10, 5, 1 person there have zero protection, and they are going likely from whatever revenue they had to zero revenue over the next months. And so there needs to be something done about the small companies, and particularly about the managers of those companies, because they've taken risks. Of course, they knew that they were taking risks, but to survive this crisis, they need extra attention from the government.
Filipe.
Yeah, totally agree. Sorry, but totally agree with Domingos and David. And this is a cash flow crisis that's coming, definitely. Or that it is here already. So let me start. What will not work is credit lines of 2 and 3%. That is crazy. Just going by credit is already crazy. Because okay, but if you have to, it should be at least 0%, at least. And what's not going to work is also social security to pay back in 2 or 3 months, 70% of the social security you have to pay, and then, well, it's simply a mess. So this is not going to work. This is a cash flow issue. The majority of the entities, and I'm mentioning entities on purpose, so it's not a for-profit, because it's not only a for-profit problem, because a lot of not-for-profits and cooperatives and associations and whatever, we know that the majority of the entities in Portugal, they don't have cash flow for 3 months, and the majority of them, they don't have even cash flow for more than 1 month. So this is a liquidity, this is a cash flow problem. So we need to find solutions to inject cash in the entities. Like David was saying, regardless of the amount, we need to put it. Otherwise, this is going to be, well, shit it to the fan really, really fast and really hard. Because unfortunately, the smaller ones are going to be hit the hardest, because they will not have the resources. And by smaller, I mean either the small SMEs, the micro entrepreneurs, or people with the lowest resource or the low paying jobs also, because they are going to be the ones in layoff. So we need to do something, and we need to do fast in order to put cash in the economy. In regards of the funds, I agree with David. So funds, either VCs, BAs, or they have investors, they have cash, they have money, but most of them, they are going to be focused on follow-on rounds. Definitely, they are going to try and protect their own portfolio companies, and they will be much less looking at new investments. So startups or funding rounds that it was in the beginning, or they were in the beginning, then the first discussions, well, they are going to change a lot. Valuations are going to drop. That's for certain. But, well, in my opinion, that's not a bad thing also. At least in my case, 3 out of every talks I have with entrepreneurs is about lowering their valuation, because it was really high. But it's not going to stop. So it's going to still happen, but more on follow-ons, less on new investments. But eventually things will get back to normal. But again, it's going to take, I would say, at least 3 months until it starts to get back to normal.
So now let's look at the tourism sector. Let's talk a little bit about this sector, because we're all talking about like the government helping startups. Do you think that the government should help this tourism sector in the same way? Because for years now, we've been investing a lot of money, using vehicles like Tourism Portugal and so on to potentiate. I think I can say this: these startups in ecosystem. So how do you think that the future of tourism will go? Because Portugal is all about tourism. Web Summit came here because we have good weather and so on, and a lot of events. A lot of our pitch of bringing stuff to Portugal comes attached to the tourism that we have. And now with this crisis, do you think that we are going to recover? Do you think that next year we recover, or do you think that, like, in terms of a single person, the way that they behave the individual will behave in the future and going to other countries, how do you think that this is going to come out in this sector, in the tourism sector? Filipe, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah. So I'm not a tourist expert, definitely, unless I'm good when I'm traveling. But in my opinion, we definitely should, in some way or in certain ways, continue to invest in tourism, because those things you were talking about, and that makes and what makes Portugal so great, it's the people, the weather, the food, the drinks, of course. That's not going to change. And definitely, okay, this 2020, 2021 is going to be a mess. It's going to be really, really bad, definitely. But we always have 2022 and so on. So the future is here, and Portugal is going to still be a great place to be, to live and to visit, of course. So definitely, yes, continue to invest. Tourism is still, and it will be still, a hot sector. But again, I'm sure it's going to change also. So many restaurants, many coffees, a lot of things or business are going to change. Maybe going to be more tech driven. I'm not sure. I don't have the answer yet. But I will summary my brief response in yes, invest, but try to guess what's going to happen, and I'm sure it's going to change in some way. Maybe tech, not sure. But for instance, and touching a bit on David's work, maybe start or continue to push and sell Portugal as a health tourism and medtech tourism.
Yeah. And sorry to interrupt, Philip. And do you think that this 14% that David was saying of our GDP being on tourism, that creates a lot of problems when there is a crisis like this? If the crisis that just shut down 14% of our GDP, then we are in a huge problem. Do you think that we must mitigate this value, like bring it down and focus on other segments, on other ecosystems, like in the health, like in the medtech, like thing? Do you think that is like a wake-up call, the way that we behave now?
Jose, we are Portuguese. We are used to this. This is another Monday for us. So this is not the end of the world. Well, if you track back, well, in how many crises have we been through the last 30, 40 years? So things are going to change. Things are going to be different. But Portugal is not only about tourism. Okay, we were selling a lot to tourism. It was visible, it was shown about that. But Portugal is much more than that. And you can see that by the quality of our entrepreneurs and by the quality of our startups. And this is actually an opportunity, and you actually are seeing it by some initiatives that are being taken by tech that are happening at the moment. And this is the quality of the people we have. And this is the time, and I'm sure this is going to happen, and they will come true, and they will make it happen. So of course it's going to be tough times. I don't want to downplay that, but I'm very optimistic in the future, and I'm sure we will come out stronger from this. And the good sectors, let's call it that way, they will come out stronger. And tech and medtech for sure. It's one of the sectors that will come out stronger from this. And again, tourism, even restaurants and all of that, not all of them are going down, because you have the ones that were already doing home deliveries. They are booming. So that's actually an opportunity. But that's one of the things that's going to change.
Thank you. David, you want to go next?
Happy to, if my mic works. So I think for tourism, I'm not even a good tourist, I think. But I do see the impact. I think I agree somewhat with what you said. If something has a way of 14% in our GDP, we should take care of it, and we should be aware. I don't think we need to change the percentage by touching the absolute number. So I wish that the absolute number in tourism goes up and starts growing again as fast as we can, and we should do as much as we can to support this sector. Of course, that we should think about investing in other areas. And here again, I'm going to talk about healthcare. If in January you will go to an investor and say, I have this biotech company that could have a cure for an infectious disease, or you take the same 10 million and you build an hotel in Alentejo, both of them are going to give you a payback in 10 to 15 years. All of them would do the hotel. I have no doubt. No one was going to invest in the biotech company. I think we need to take this chance to think about where we put our money and which are the areas that we want to push our economy over. And healthcare clearly should be one of them. Of course, that in healthcare, you have the risky investments like the biotech ones that I do, but you also have infrastructure. Our healthcare infrastructure needs significant investment to be beefed up. If we compare what's going on in Germany versus what's going on in France or in Spain, you see that their healthcare system, both public and private, operated and managed, is much stronger than ours. So they are much more robust than we are to respond to any sanitary crisis. And I think even for the tourism sector, Portugal will recover from tourism as fast as the small number of debts that we're going to have. So if people next year are going to say, I'm going to Italy, to Spain, or to Portugal in vacation, one of the things that's going to be in their mind is, if something weird happens, where will I get the best healthcare to take care of my health while I'm in vacation? And so far, we are not doing bad in numbers. I believe that we are going to do as bad as everyone else. It's a pandemic, so only by luck will we have much better outcomes out of this pandemic crisis. But we should think about this. Having a strong healthcare system is a strong pillar to having a cosmopolitan international community in Portugal. Because if people can choose where they go and where they spend their money, from now on, safety in terms of healthcare is going to be on the top of their minds.
Thank you. Domingos?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about this because on one end, I understand that people, after staying at home for 4 or 5 months, the first thing that they will want to do is travel. But at the same time, it all depends on the confidence and the money that they have in the pocket. I think it has an impact. David was saying that our debt toll will be relevant to a certain to what at what point traveling to Portugal is safe. But again, at the same time, what I speak with a lot of startups in the tourism and leisure sector and with more established companies, and all of them anticipate a change of behavior from tourists. All of them anticipate that traveling is going to be different. For example, short-term rentals perhaps are not going to be as hot and trendy as they were before. So everyone is trying to see how will the tourist behave, and that's why I'm not entirely sure if we're going to have such as a speedy recovery in terms of globalization and travel and accommodation. I'm not so sure about that. I think that it may take a while. And on the other hand, and this goes directly to real estate, because tourism in Portugal is very much based on real estate. It's the main business behind any tourism deal usually is real estate. I'm curious to see, and I started to do an exercise, which was to call and ask for prices, and I'll call again in 3 months' time to ask what the price is now, because I understand that the real estate bubble that we were sustaining, or at least we were trying to control with the golden visa limitation and everything else, which was also a pillar of the real estate investment and tourism sector, I fear that it has burst. I don't have data or hard data to support this, but I feel that in 3 to 4 months' time, rents will come down, and price per square meter in Lisbon will come down, because there's not enough confidence that the economy will pick up where it left, and it won't. So it's just a matter of how much will it take to get there again, and I'm not that positive about that. So I see a looming future with a lot of clouds and some rain and thunders and lightnings and about the tourism sector, quite frankly.
But just jumping here really quickly, but that's one of the reasons of real estate, and I agree with you. And real estate, I'm not sure if it's going to drop, if it's going to be a big drop or whatever it is. But the thing is, real estate and Portugal is still attractive if you take out Lisbon, although Lisbon is still not that bad. And in real estate terms, Portugal is still very attractive, and that's why I believe we are also going to have a strong recovery in that front, because Portugal will continue to be attractive. Probably, maybe you are right, and it's going to be even more attractive. So we will continue to attract a lot of foreign investment, and we know, and we saw that in the last years, and that foreign investment in real estate also brings people and business and all of that. So I'm sure, I'm really confident to come back.
Yeah,
fast.
Yeah, the issue there, Filipe, is real estate works on supply and demand, and I'm not sure if we're going to have a demand. First, because market real estate in the last 5 to 6 years was the most attractive form of investment in terms of return. And Lisbon was a safe place, and it had a certain quality number of elements. And I'm not so sure in 5 months' time the conditions will remain the same. So, and I have mixed feelings about this. I think it can go well, but there are a lot of challenges that we need to overcome. And again, I come back to this. It all has to do with confidence and what the government will do. And I wouldn't like to be in their shoes right now, but they have a huge responsibility towards the country and towards the citizens, more than ever. But yeah.
So
on this real estate, can I just put another angle there, which is I think for prices to drop significantly, you need to have a surge of houses in the market. And if you think about Lisbon and Porto, so the city centers, I do not believe that the buyers that bought the houses over the last 5 years, one, some of them cannot sell because of golden visa, so they are forced to keep the property. And two, a lot of them are not going to be financially affected by the crisis. So where I do believe that new developments going in will face challenges in terms of finding buyers, I don't think there is going to be a surge in the offer unless people that were doing short-term rentals all of a sudden say, okay, this short-term rental business is not good, so either put it in the long-term market for rentals, bringing the prices for rentals down, or I sell the house because I'm done with this business and I want to sell it. So I think in that scenario, we might have a slowdown in prices in the core areas of Porto and Lisbon. Otherwise, I don't think that the buyers are going to sell them like happened in 2011, because people could not afford, 2008 actually, people could not afford to pay the mortgage, so they needed to sell the house. So the buyer in Lisbon and Porto was a cash buyer, so they bought it up front.
But David, no, let's make this interesting in terms of an argument, in the sense that imagine that you've invested in Portugal in a 500,000, 1 million apartment, whatever, because that was your economies, and you felt that you need to invest in a liquid market, in a liquid place, and suddenly, and you live out of your dividends, of your income, of the work that you do, and suddenly you see that because of the crisis, you're going to have 2 years where probably your dividends will be harmed in a way that your expected income is no longer available. What you're going to do is try to sell your assets, and in that sense, and I've done a lot of real estate deals for private investors, I can tell you that people that had a house here in Portugal at Pé de Terra, that they wanted to come here, will they continue to do that? Will they try to sell at the best price to get some liquidity and invest in other areas that are also there, that probably will be good opportunities once this crisis is over? And this is the question, and it's good to think out loud, because I think that the demand will come down, and the supply will increase on secondhand sales, quite frankly.
And the second part is where I'm not so sure. And I think part of the buying decision in Portugal was also fiscality. And so as long as we don't touch that, I think we also create an incentive to sell other assets if the people have them. And I can think, I live in Paris, correct? I can think of all the French. They bought houses there because of fiscality, and they get their retirement from France. So as long as we can carry on with this system, they prefer to sell their house in Paris rather than their apartment in Lisbon, because they can still get more money. But
yeah.
So, and Portugal will continue to be a low rent country, so it will continue to be cheap to live here.
So now let's go for some questions. So we have at least 2 questions and some opinions here. Let's go for the first question. And this is regarding not the tourism sector, but the first part of our conversation. Will this serve as a grand experiment in the universal basic income? If so, how do you think it could go? So basically, is Eduardo said camera? I think everybody here knows him. He's asking basically about the universal basic income. Do you think this could be something for the future? Do you think that this is possible? Because there are a lot of conversation about this on the United States. Do you think this is a conversation to have in Portugal with our economy? What's your opinion? This is kind of a controversial topic, but I think it's a funny topic, and I think maybe for the future. I don't know. Yeah. You jumped in, so yeah.
I have an opinion. I think it's too soon to start talking about that. I think before that, we should again discuss how are we going to put liquidity in the market. How are we how our company is going to have money. That's the first thing we should discuss. Basic universal. Okay, that could be interesting, and we have already some countries that did some experiments on that. Unfortunately, none with good results or with significant results, unfortunately. But I will just put a pin on that discussion, and I think it's much preferable now to waste our time and brain cells into finding ways of this crisis and injecting cash in the economy. Two things.
And I just the European Union a couple of weeks ago said that it was out of the question to have a minimum wage throughout Europe, and again, I think that would be a first step towards a universal basic income. And going on with that, I think that, as I was saying, that the Portuguese government has a huge test here, but the one that has the biggest is the European Union, because if the European Union doesn't act together, what is the purpose of having a European Union when we have a cross-country pandemic and the European Union is not doing what it's supposed to be doing? So that for me, if the European Union doesn't have a huge impact on overcoming this, what's the point of having it? So that, for me, that's the biggest test. And then we can discuss a minimum wage salary for everyone in Europe, and then we can discuss a universal basic income. That, for me, is the steps that we need to go through.
Yeah, and Domingos, just to complement what you just said, there was a big red flag when the European Union was giving orders in terms of closing borders and so on, and the countries behave at their own pace. So they didn't behave all the same. We all saw what was happening in Italy, and we all ignore it, and we all wait for the first case on our country to take measures. And this is just like to go into the conversation. And now, David, do you want to add anything to this topic?
So I think two things. On universal income, I don't think it solves this crisis, correct? It's not because everyone has 100 euros, whatever the number is, that you can solve the economic crisis right now. It could be a mix in the pot eventually, but not the solution for the crisis, which is to maintain jobs and income in families. And this is different than the minimum income across. On European Union, I think I would wish that we were a federation in Europe, a proper federation with a government. I've been defending this since I can think about politics. And I think here we saw it, correct? So it's stupid enough that the European Union, in the crisis mechanism that was set up in response to the fires in Portugal some years ago, did not include healthcare, because healthcare is a matter of the state, is not a matter of the union. So the union cannot at all recommend whatever in terms of healthcare. This is just stupid. It means that we do not have a strategic reserve of ventilators, masks, paracetamol, whatever you want to say in terms of crisis. And this can be deployed in a pandemic. But imagine if there is an earthquake in Lisbon. We are going to have mass casualties, as we are not going to have in this pandemic crisis, correct? Significantly more people are going to be injured. We are going to need help. And it would be good that the European Union could immediately deploy this type of force to Portugal to act. And so it's not only in this scenario of pandemic that we need to be thinking about this. Multiple other scenarios before this one that no one thought of would benefit from having this. But this means that the political leaders in the countries need to stop blaming Europe for the things that they don't like and turning to Europe for the things that Europe cannot do because they did not mandate Europe to do it. And it means that we need to be integrated. My hair goes back when I see that Russia is the one that is going to be sending medical equipment and specialists to Italy. No, not because I have anything about Russia or against Russia in particular. It's because it's not any other country in Europe that is doing it. It just doesn't make any sense. And hopefully Italy comes out of the curve ahead of all of us, and Italy is able to send medical doctors to France, to Germany, to whomever needs them, because they were trained and they know how to deal with this situation better. So I completely agree with what Domingos said. If the European Union does not behave properly in this crisis, better to call it off, and we figure out with whom we want to do partnerships. And in terms of healthcare, it did not, because it did not have competencies, and the leaders in the European Commission took some time to try and at least do recommendations. Now in the economic response, it needs to be centralized, and we need to do something which at least creates some homogeneity across the Eurozone.
So now let's, all of these things, thank you so much for your amazing opinions. Now let's talk a little bit about collaboration, because that is the main topic. And by saying all of this, how do you think, and I'm going to summarize some of the questions here. We're talking about building a stronger digital innovation ecosystem. And we can build this with collaboration between big corporates and startups. And do you think this is the time to focus on this collaboration and try to build the ecosystem in a different way? Because a lot of these big corporations can actually go to startups and try to reinvent themselves and try to use their products. And the startups could use them to survive in these times. How do you think that this symbiosis can work out between them? In terms of collaboration, of course. Domingos, you want to go first?
Well, yeah, sure. I try to understand. I think that collab, it's one of the specific characteristics of the entrepreneurship ecosystem, and they were the first to respond in terms of how can we help, what can we do to help the government. And I had a number of examples individually and together. To be able to create some solutions in terms of healthcare and medical supplies, but they all hit in the wall with the bureaucracy of the government. But and that's one aspect of it. And the other is, right now, for example, what I'm seeing is a lot of institutions in the entrepreneurship ecosystem coming together and trying to speak in one voice to Europe and to Portugal to try and have specific measures for startups in terms of investment, what we were discussing initially. So I see a lot of solidarity here, and that's one characteristic that we really need to improve right now, and speak in one voice. Now, between corporate and startups, I see it more difficult. I see with a little bit more skepticism right now, because corporate world is trying to see how it's going to deal with it, and I don't see that angle, but perhaps I'm wrong. So this is my 2 cents.
David, you want to go next?
So I think corporates are closed for business, correct? They are not operational. Their teams are trying to figure out how hundreds or thousands of employees are now working under remote. They are all focused in trying to understand what's going on and not necessarily very open. Some of them are trying to put fillers out there. For instance, there is a huge problem with students that do not have access to education via internet because they neither have internet nor computers at home. And so in this period, how do we do something about that? And that might be an area where some corporates could engage with smaller companies to try and provide solutions. Eventually, the solutions that the corporate have is cash, is not necessarily anything else. But that's clearly one of the areas. In the healthcare system, I think it's always difficult, correct? It's a very regulated area. You cannot necessarily just create a solution and put it into the hospitals because there are laws for that. So either we create an exceptional period for experimentation during the crisis, or we need to create collaborations between companies that know how to do innovation in healthcare and companies that do innovation and want to focus on healthcare because of the crisis. For that, I think there are 2 or 3 things that are key. And one is something that Portugal should think about is to do medtech. And for instance, so that you have an idea, a mask is a medtech device. So it needs a special certification to go through the process. And you need these entities called notified bodies that certify that the companies that do the masks are doing the masks properly for the healthcare system. We do not have a notified body in Portugal specialized in healthcare, which means that in this time of crisis where everyone is trying to do so, Portugal is going to be on the lower bottom of the list in terms of priority for that. our national agency, Infarmed, used to be a notified body, stopped being. So at this time of crisis, I think the government could actually make Infarmed start certifying, so that people that want to do masks, small confection companies that used to do shirts, they can do masks or gowns or whatever for the hospitals, but they need the right approval, and we need to create a fast way to do it. And so I think in terms of collaboration in the healthcare, I see it more as small company to small company, so cross sectors, companies that now they don't have orders and they have the capabilities to do some of these products, to collaborate with specialized companies in the healthcare system so that they could actually deliver products for medical grade, if I can call it like that.
Thank you. Filipe.
Yeah, sorry, I dropped there for a minute, but you were asking about collaboration in startups and companies, right? In big companies, correct?
Yes, collaboration
Yes.
between startups and big companies.
Okay. Yeah.
And corporates.
To be honest, I don't really understand that question, because this is not the time for that to happen, because in my opinion, that always happened. And I don't have now of startups, and the majority of the ideas that become a startup and then actually become a successful business, the majority of them, they will actually sell to a big corporate or partner or merge with a big corporate. So that's something that is already happening, and that is something that always happened. So this is just one another opportunity or another way that it will happen for sure. My biggest question in that front is what's going to happen with the CVCs. So what's going to happen with the corporate venture capitals, in a sense, because again, either small or big, all corporates, they are going to be strained in a sense. So cash issues. Big corporates usually they are more balanced, so they will have less problems theoretically. But I'm curious to know what's going to happen with them and with their strategy, and if they will continuously be looking and actively be looking at the ecosystem and investing and collaborating in the ecosystem, if they will turn into their own portfolio also to help the companies they are already working with. So I'm actually curious to see what's going to happen in this side of the table. I don't have an answer for you right now.
So,
and jumping in, just one big. We lost your
yeah,
huge.
I saw. Don't worry, it's fine. The color
Right.
just went berserk. It's fine. Go.
So and one thing that David was saying, it's something that we have that I have been defending for a while. This would be a wonderful opportunity for the state to do private-public partnerships. Well, I like that one.
Sorry, everything just burned. The color just went out. I don't know what's happening.
No, but saying that it's a good moment for public and private partnerships with startups, for example, on homeschooling.
Don't say that, Domingos. It always goes wrong. Come on, don't put the public working with startups.
It's not working.
Don't say that.
It's not working. It's mandating. It's giving the mandate to startups, edutech companies to do that, because our kids, the experience that they're having with homeschooling is awful. Absolutely, the public sector is not ready to deal with it. And are you going to give an administrative pass to everyone? But you don't have that system. People are discussing right now that this year school will only resume in the last quarter. Until then, what are you going to do? But the state doesn't have a clue, and there are wonderful edutech Portuguese companies that could do the job just as perfect. So it's just an opportunity there.
Yeah, but like just we're talking about the collaboration, and I think that we can always agree to disagree that collaboration between big companies and startups can work out and come out with good results. And there are a lot of incentives to do this for the startups and for the corporates. That's where I was trying to go with the question, just for you to understand my perspective. So now let's look at the chat and see some questions, and we have a lot of questions here. Before everything just No, like my camera is crazy. No, my camera just went fine now again. I don't know what's happening, but yeah, this is live stream. This is what happens, people, when you do something live. Okay, this is not a normal podcast, so let's just all accept this. Okay.
Starting with the host, right?
Yeah, yeah. What's supposed to be right just failed. So yeah, no matter how many times you try to do it right, eventually some surprises will come. So exactly like the coronavirus, you see the analogy here. So let's go for some questions. There are some. I'm going to read some of them. When you mentioned you wanted the government to grant cash directly to the companies and startups, what will be the criteria? Who and how someone will decide what and who to give? The first question. And I'm going to read some of them, and you can go and pick them and go with them. Stella Catarino said, in my opinion, generally, it's an issue of Portugal mindset. Everyone is trying to reinvent the wheel by themselves alone. It's all about rebuilding a collaboration mindset here in Portugal. These two opinions here, the first question, the second opinion. Now let's go through them, and then we go to the other one. So yeah,
I can start with the first one if you want. I think we should do it like in France. There is 0 criteria. Everyone can go. It doesn't really matter. If you are A, B, C, or D, you can go. They've created lines for everyone. They don't ask if your company was particularly affected by the corona crisis. If your restaurant does home delivery or if it doesn't, all the restaurants can go there. I think this is going to be a generic crisis. And that's why I think we should create a massive stock of cash so that we push as much cash into the companies. Then if we see that some people just abused and didn't need the money at all and got it, we'll see that in the annual accounts, and we can go back and take it if needed be.
But here, I think I understand the question in the sense, yeah, everyone can have access to money, but how much will you give to each one? Just what they ask, if you want. So that there has to be some criteria. And in that sense, what I was thinking about this, how can we do it alternatively? I would find an agent, and it can be banks, although I think that banks right now are not prepared for that, that according to your accounts and according to your turnover, you could ask for a percentage of it. Or in case you don't have, if your business is not a top line business, you can do it on the number of employees that you have. So there are several metrics that you could find, that you could define. So you're a small company in this sector with this payroll. You have an interval between X and Y, and you can go for the money that you want. You are an M company that has this top line. You can have a percentage of that. So it would be easy. Of course, there could be some people taking advantage of it, but then you can audit later on what David was saying, because that for me, someone was speaking about the Portuguese mindset. For me, the worst thing about the Portuguese mindset is that what the legislator always thinks that we are thieves. So it always make laws thinking, how am I going to prevent to be fooled? And it doesn't matter, because you will always be fooled. There will always be the rotten apple. So, and that's not the point. So the point would be, you're a company, you have been carrying on business, you have a turnover, X amount of money goes to you, and that's it. It would be fairly simple.
Yeah, I don't like credit, so I would suggest one of two things, because companies now need either
Filipe, your microphone is failing. Filipe, your microphone is failing. We can't hear you.
Really. Yes, can you hear?
Yeah,
okay.
Your last.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, your last 20 seconds.
Okay, so I was saying that I'm not a credit fan, so I would suggest one of two things or two things. So Finland, what they did, they basically 70 or 75% of the salaries of the companies, the state is going to support that. That's it. So they apply 70 or 75% of the salaries they support. Another thing could be actually for companies not to actually pay all the taxes they have to pay. Let's say for the next 3 months, social security and the IRS or whatever it is. So companies, they don't pay that. They will retain that into their balance to pay to their suppliers and to pay to their salaries, for instance. And these are two quick, fast, easy measures to implement. It's going to cost a lot to the state, definitely, but I do believe it's going to cost much more when all the companies will start to fail and all the layoffs and people going to unemployment and all of that. So I think this, for instance, this has two ideas: quick cash in the companies, or at least less cash coming out of the companies.
And now let me.
José,
Sorry.
On this point, with Filipe was saying about tax saving, which is the most effective way to put money in the companies. I had access to what the government is thinking is simply postpone quarter after quarter. You mean we will get the second quarter and will be postponed to the third, and on the third it will be postponed to the fourth, and we will get to 2021 paying double the amount that we should be paying. So that's the strategy right now. So I don't think that will happen, unfortunately.
But in your opinion, do you think that will solve anything? Because what's that saying is that the company in the future will have to basically to make more money to pay all of that. So
I fully agree with you. I'm just saying that the last information that I had, this is the strategy of the government, and I had them stating clearly that their strategy will be postponed quarter after quarter until it's justified. Which is that's why I think that the government needs to step up their game. Otherwise, this is going to be a mess. I was just.
And imagine what it does for planning, correct? If you need to be waiting for the next quarter to postpone, your cash flow management is just going to hurt even more than just saying that you need to pay it. In fact,
they are just delaying the inevitable. So let me read this, and it has questions and opinions here from Francisco. Thoughts on the possibility of a bigger social revolution as a consequence of this pandemic, particularly in the US, where the public funds for education and healthcare are often declined. Suddenly, trillions of dollars worth of bailouts are being discussed for saving corporations that already generate billions in revenue, which is angering a portion of the population. He's talking about probably the bill that was approved yesterday morning by Democrats and Republicans, because the first bill was really focused. So just to contextualize what's happened there in the U.S. politics. So they are going to release a bill. The first proposition was a more Republican proposition. This proposition helped more the companies, and the second proposition that is going to be approved by the Democrats will help more the people that just lost their jobs. Okay, so and there is a huge discussion in here. Now, a lot of this, what he just said, a lot of these billions, trillions of dollars, usually ejected on healthcare and education, will now be injected in already. The question that he's asking, will this create a social revolution? Tell me your opinions. This is like a really, really strong topic. So yeah. Let's try to go with it.
So I think as we saw those approvals, we also saw Donald Trump's approval rate go up. So I think if you want to do any social revolution, that should not be happening, correct? Yeah. And so I think it might be a topic in certain circles of the American reality. I've lived in the US for some years. And even my Democratic friends do not buy into a lot of the things here that we think are granted, even in that reality. Okay, Massachusetts and a lot of countries have actually universal healthcare insurance for everyone through state subsidized systems, but that's as far as they would go. So I do not believe that this time is going to be an opportunity for a social movement of change in the US. A lot of people are business oriented and they want to retain their jobs or have some sort of income. And so I think the majority of people in the US, as we see in the approval ratings of the president after everything he has said and done on this topic, including trying to force people to lie in live television saying that a cure is going to be available in 3 or 4 weeks, are going up. So I don't believe there's going to be any type of revolution associated with this.
Yeah, same here. I think that Trump is facing re-election, so and that's a huge. That's why I believe that's why he's so concerned with economy, because economy and corporations is the backbone of the fabric of the American society, and you need companies to be well, for the stock markets to be well, for to have money in the economy, and I think that his main concern with vertical quarantine is to keep the economy up and running, because the worst thing that could happen for him for re-election is the economy. The economy is stupid. So in that sense, I don't think there will be a social revolution. Not just right now. It will happen someday, but I don't think now it will be this would be the reason behind it. I still have the bill to read. It's my to do before going to bed, and perhaps tomorrow we can do this again.
Filipe?
Yeah, I don't think, first, I don't think we should compare anything Europe and the States. So they are two different continents, two different cultures, two different mindsets. So that's the first thing. But having said that, I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in the future, and how the States is going to deal with this pandemic. It's going to be really interesting to be honestly, but if it's going to provoke a social revolution or anything like that, well, too soon to say. So one of these days I was reading, someone wrote or said or something like that they usually, when there is a crisis, poor people pay, and when there is a profit, rich people take the profit, or something like this. I'm not sure if this is the case, or if it's going to be a social revolution, or whatever is going to happen. But what I know is that we have to do something, and we are all part of this. And it is in our hands. So we do what we must do, and I believe we are doing what we can, but shouldn't compare us too much with the state. Totally different mindset and a totally different culture, and for them it's totally normal to preserve a company and let someone die, for instance. Which for us, and when I say us, Europe, not only Portugal, and for us, Europe, a human life has much more value than a company has.
Thank you. This is usually a topic that I like. The next thing, because I'm also discussing with my friends when the next social revolution is going to come, and when all of this was happening in China, and we saw some hot topics coming from there, that the government didn't behave, and the Chinese, that there were some voices in the Chinese community to speak against the government. That didn't last long, and nobody's going to ask why, so that's fine. So now let's go to the other questions. That is, Carlos Rezende just said, grant cash by loans with the government backing it. Can borrow money as much as the years of payroll or the percentage of the annual revenue, which is higher. Thing like this. Maria Isabella Quintela just said, public-private partnerships become usually a burden for taxpayers. Startups are usually of high risk, as PPP involves a balanced risk. What about the new Horizon Europe? There is a part dedicated to fund startups. He's talking about the Horizon Europe. That is, I think it's a fund. Correct me if I'm wrong. From Europe.
It's the new framework program for the next 7 years, which has not been approved because Europe does not have an approved budget, so it does not technically exist.
Oh, okay. There you go. And there is also like a question from Stella Rogatarino. That's how much time do we have to actually promote new entrepreneurial and private and public management behavior? Maybe the time of this crisis will not be enough to promote real. Opinion in here? To ask again?
No, I can have a go. I think there will be a profound change in our community. I'm a strong believer, not of a social revolution, because all the social revolutions that we've witnessed usually come unannounced, and this could be the time. But I think what we will be is more aware of our behavior, and as I was saying in the beginning, I think that the community will demand from state more investment in healthcare. The leaders of each country suddenly started listening to scientists and listening daily to scientists saying that the doomsday is coming if we don't do something. The environment, it was a topic, a very hot topic, but government was sort of always saying, yeah, it's important, but it doesn't give votes. But right now, it's going to be much more relevant in the public agenda, in the government, not in the opposition, not in civil society, but in the government. And for me, those changes will have a huge effect. I think culture will be more appreciated. So because what this time is making ourselves is getting in connection with us. What are we doing? What are our priorities? You were living in a fake security sense that your well-being is all about consumption, and suddenly you provoke a change in our community. So I think there will be changes.
I would even add that we saw the changes happening, correct? I think I was not for premature quarantine in Portugal, because I think part of the epidemiology behind this crisis is that you do need some people to get infected in a controlled manner, because that's part of the future solution for it. But you saw that society in Portugal actually acted before government, correct? So a lot of people took measures and demanded measure from government. Clearly, closing of schools in Portugal was demanded by public opinion, contrary to the indications of the scientists. So we already see a change happening in the way that society behaves towards government, and the way the society is willing to move to actually demand what they think is right. So I'm behind Domingos on this.
Filipe?
Sorry, I lost you there from.
Your microphone and your video is freezing. Filipe, I don't know.
I'm having some connection issues.
I can hear you now, but I can't see you. You're frozen. This is all about going live, people. This is what happens, okay?
This is the effect of net neutrality that just was revoked by the government.
So, Filipe, Okay,
I'm
let's
back.
go.
Yes, sorry, I was saying that I didn't get your question. I'm having some too much internet right now. Too much people using the internet. Come on, people, disconnect.
So the
now,
question
was
about
what
change.
was the question?
Was about change. Do you see, like with this crisis, like what's the change that is coming out of it?
I'm not, well, I would love to have that answer. I don't know the answer for that for sure, but something is going to change. We know that. What I would like to see changing definitely is a change towards more impact business, social business, which is something I strongly believe. And I would love to see, and I'm sure it's going to happen, because people, and by people I mean investors and public in general, everyone are going to be much more aware of that, and are going to be much more aware of planet-centric and people-centric companies, and not only companies that are concerned about the profit in the short term, in just bringing just increasing shareholder value in financial terms. So one thing I'm seeing, and I'm sure it's going to happen, is for B Corps and in social and impact companies to have even more power and strength in the near future, which is good for me, because I'm in that sector. So it means good business for me in the future.
Thank you. So now let's go to the last questions. This is from Eduardo again. As investors, how much damage is this crisis going to do to the startups metrics? how much of the past data is still useful to use to make decisions today. And this is a pretty good topic, because investment is all about metrics, it's all about KPIs, it's all about growth, like you all know. So how do you think that this is going? We all know that for online companies like apps and so on, that people are staying in house and the metrics are going up. But if you look at the health sector, the metrics will go down. I was just speaking with Luis Motinho, that is the CEO of New Rise, and now he's facing completely new challenges, to how to deal with this company on the future. So I want to have your take in this. So how are you going to deal with the startups metrics after this? What are you looking for, in that data?
If you want, I can start. I think for us, in our portfolio, so far we have not seen impacts, but we are going to have major impacts across. And for instance, we have companies doing clinical trials. No hospital whatsoever now is doing a clinical trial, right? They are trying to save lives every single day. I've been speaking with oncologists that do not see a cancer patient for 2 weeks now, because they're all now infectiologists or internists, because it's all hands on deck. Across Europe, for instance, I can tell you that people that need to do animal experimentation in large animals, those large animals are typically ventilated. Those ventilators are all now gone to the hospitals to be used in people, so all of those facilities are down. So anything that needs to use healthcare infrastructure basically is going to be stopped, and it's not during the crisis. It's during the crisis and during the aftermath, correct? 6 months after everything has gone to normal, I don't know when that is, but 6 months after that, people are still going to be recovering. And so in that sense, I think we need to raise this period of history, correct? As investors for those companies, we need to provide enough cash side by side with governments to make sure that whenever this day is, we can pretend that day is today, or actually 3 weeks ago, and start from there, completely ignore that data. If you're talking more about the digital space, actually in the healthcare area, where I know better, a lot of companies are doing well, correct? If you think about telemedicine, whatever you think about of healthcare that you can do online, exactly. So the metrics of those companies are going up. And again, we need to ignore them, because once the crisis is past, people are still wanting to go to the appointment. A lot of people are not going to be comfortable with this. Of course, that they will gain loyal customers if the service is good, but the metrics are going to go down. So we are not going to know what's a new normal post this area. So for me, I think we are just going to delete this period of history and assume what happens did not happen. And either we take the previous metrics or we start from scratch.
That's a really good intake on it.
I think we will start from scratch. That's my 2 cents. Well, in our case, so we are actually now in the midst of 3 investments. We are not going to stop any investment. We don't have any idea to stop actually an investment. But one thing that people need to be aware of, this is not going to be in the future. This is not going to happen. This is happening already. So, for instance, in our portfolio companies, in the ones that we are doing the investment, we are already talking with them and helping them to rearrange all of their metrics and rearrange all of their business plans, because the world it's already changing. It's going to be different. In what way? We don't know, of course. We don't have that answer yet. But anyhow, they need to prepare, and we are preparing basically just cutting costs and trying to increase revenues and prepare for whatever is coming. So, but this is happening already, and companies and people, they need to prepare for that. And again, need to prepare for at least 3 to 6 months. But in our investment, in our plans, we don't plan to stop or to change anything. But again, we are fairly recent, so we don't have a lot of portfolio companies. So follow-ons is not a concern for us. We are just still doing first investments. So we'll continue to be very active in the market, looking to invest. And actually for us, it's kind of interesting, or it could be kind of interesting, because we'll probably see company valuations going down, which means that we can buy them cheaper in a sense. So it can actually be good for us.
I'll be quick. I think David and Filipe already said most of it. It depends if we are on a pause mode or if you are on stop mode. if you're going to resume or if you're going to start over again. But I believe that right now it's a wonderful time for experiment. Because now you can have the attention of your clients because they're all day at home, reachable. So now it's a wonderful sandbox, and you can try and do a lot of experiments and gain a lot of clients once this is over. So it's an amazing, within the tragedy that we're living in, there's a lot of challenges and angles that you can explore with your computer, especially if you're a digital business. Right now you have the full attention of your customers.
It's kind of cold to say that, but every crisis is an opportunity, definitely.
So let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for more than 60 people that were listening to us. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. Remember that this podcast will be on YouTube. Remember to leave a like, subscribe. Look at me, I am a YouTuber right now saying this stuff. Subscribe, leave a like. Don't forget to share if you like these conversations. We're going to do, the next podcast will be on Wednesday. We already have some guests confirmed. We're going to have, for example, this is going to be strange. We're going to have a guy from Google, another lawyer, and one of the biggest YouTubers in Portugal. So we're going to have, like to go with collaboration again, but between different sectors. And to these guests, thank you so much, Domingos, David, and Filipe, for your amazing opinions. And thank you all for watching. I don't know if you have any last remarks to make. I'll give you some time to say it. So let's tell people to stay at home first. And Domingos, I don't know if you want to say something.
No, just thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure, and just stay safe and try something, because right now this is a good time to do it.
Yeah, I don't have a final wish besides the fact that we can hopefully do this live in person at some moment in time, the shorter as we can. Till then, stay safe. Thank you.
Filipe?
Yeah, it was a pleasure discussing this with you guys, and stay safe. And most of all, this is going to pass, and we are all going to be okay. So stay optimistic, and we are going to come out stronger from this. I'm sure of it.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, community. Bye. See you next week.